Hello everyone, welcome to Homemaking Radio. I hope you're doing well in your current circumstances and that you have great plans for its improvement. And welcome to the manse where I am broadcasting today. I started this little scheme of having a radio program to listen to so you wouldn't have to watch something being demonstrated or watch something and could get something done while you had a little company. Now, back in the day when we grew up in large families, particularly me, I would never have thought of doing something like this because there were people around. And most women back in the 1950s were homemakers. So there was no lack of company or people around you. And so now that time has gone on and there are those at home who may find themselves a little more isolated. It might be fun to listen while you work. I have my favorite things that I like to listen to. Often it is a book being read, and so I thought maybe that my family might like to hear what I have to say since they are busy with their own homes. And eventually I thought maybe we would turn this into some kind of a public sharing so that those of you who aren't members of the family can come in and be part of it. Now, if you're new here, or even if you're old here, of course, we don't say old anymore, do we? We say vital. Please click the link in the description on the channel and don't watch the video there because it's really part of my blog. And I do update my blog at the same time that I do a video. The video is just a little extra thing that I plunk in there along with pictures of the manse and the grounds and maybe a few things that I speak about I might put in there. Maybe a poem that I read. I'll just go ahead and type it out for you. And so go over there because that's where everything is, and this is what this is for. The video is part of the theme of the post that I am placing it on. So I do update my blog. It's still there, and there are still things that you can read on the blog if you're not able to listen. Now, I wanted to start out by saying, and I'm sure all of you people are tired of hearing about getting ready for the day, but I thought of a new thing as I was going outside today, kind of walking around thinking, what would I say if the children were here, or if I had daughters at my elbows still, that would be so encouraging and helpful. And I thought that maybe I would tell them that getting dressed and getting yourself prepared, I would say always bathe and dress because it's like a new beginning. Washing, we sing songs in churches about the spiritual side of life and how you renew yourself, and washing is involved, and I think that it gives you a sense of beginning. It gives you a sense of starting over, of a newness, a new day, a new chance. And so that's why I think everyone should. And even when my children were very young, get them in the shower or the bath and get them ready for the day, and they felt so good. I could tell when they came out dried and fully dressed that they just felt good. So to feel good, I think you need to do that. But don't just throw on the same old clothes. Go and find something you've got that's pretty. There's no point, in my opinion, in my experiences, as you get more vital, you start looking at those things and think, what did I save them for, that are hanging in the closet waiting for a special time? It's better just to go ahead and wear them. I don't like to give them away to Goodwill because they put a price on them, and they're just going to go for someone else that has to pay for them. And so if I don't want the item anymore, I first run it past one of my children or grandchildren and say, do you want this? And then I take their things. We run it past each other first, and I take their things too. And today I'm wearing an outfit that's a skirt and a blouse that my daughter made from an old Jessica McClintock pattern. And of course I can't find the pattern. But I'm going to have to. It has a flare on the back, and the blouse is really cute. And it has a big skirt with it, and it's made out of cotton. It has lasted, I believe, over 20 years. And so she made it, and now I'm wearing it, and it's just a very good cotton fabric. As a matter of fact, there was a teacup back in the 80s that was the exact pattern. It was a chintz teacup on this, and of course I can't find that one either, but I probably gave it to one of my children. And so I have been out walking around thinking, what am I going to say today that will fascinate the whole room? And I picked Queen Anne's lace and hydrangea and just put it in whatever I had, which is one of these mugs from the kitchen. And it kind of goes with that picture. But I have noticed these common flowers, these common things, are showing up in the florist bouquets, and very casually put together and just so beautiful. And here I have it right with me. And I was so glad Mr. S did not mow it all down, because some of it's just growing wild around the place. And I thought it also kind of went with the print on my outfit today. But cotton, I find that the cotton fabrics are the best because they're so wearable. They don't feel formal. They just feel crisp and light and fresh, and remind me of the summer days of my youth. And when we would get a fresh, just fresh clothes, fresh off the line, and they're so crisp, and the sun kind of puts a starch in it, and also sanitizes it so nice, even bleaches out old stains and marks. And so I thought today, after I finish reading to you, I'm going to talk a little bit about I'm going to talk to the young girls, the young people. And I think I might be able to persuade you to be young. And so many, I see the young girls, and I see that they are missing out on youth because they have not learned how to live a happy life that you can go back to, the kind of life that the habits and the practices that you would do when you're young, that you could go back to when you're vital, like me. Things that you can always do all your life. But I'm first going to talk to you a little bit about the books that I like to read. And a lot of you have asked about the Cottage Court. I know there are others by this title, and I'm wanting to get them all. But I think you could write your own. But I don't recommend that you buy this. There are things in here, especially if you're raising children, there's things in here that you wouldn't want to make, and they might get ideas. Although there's lots of food and stuff in here, and it recommends going on walks, and you have to be careful with things like candle making and soap making, and so just be discerning about all the books that you get, and take what you can. And last time I had read to you about introducing nature to your home and shown you this bouquet of flowers, and today I went out and got them. These are things that you could write in a journal, an art journal, and they're just little plain activities you can do from the time you're young to the time you're vital. And I talked last time about the rag rug, and I prefer to just crochet long strips of fabric, torn fabric, together to make these rugs. I was looking at a rug that I really liked, that was a fake sheepskin that goes like in front of your little fake fireplace. It was just so charming, but I thought, I could probably just crochet some little thing in an hour or so with these strips of fabric. And so now I'm going to turn the page to Woodland Walks. And these are the kind of things that I had listed when I was very, very young, the things to do as a young lady, as a child, that pulls you through your whole life and that sets you up for life. Like Mrs. Bennet said, a little sea bathing would set me up for life. Although I don't think she has sea bathing in here, she has walking in the sand, I think. So let me read what she wrote here, and then we'll get on to what I want to tell you. This is part of the homemaking part, because having a home is not just the mechanical cleaning of it. It's just putting an atmosphere in it, putting a little extra mile into it, making it comfortable, interesting, even exciting, glad to come home type of atmosphere. And to reconnect with the simple things in life, put on your walking boots and head to the woods. Now, I realize not everyone has a handy woods behind them. We'll read from Brian Kozlowski's book last time about the nearby woods. Everybody had a little bit of a forest in their area. Trees provide shelter for all kinds of animals, so woods are fantastic places to look and listen for wildlife. I was out for a walk this morning and a little bunny hopped past me. It was just a baby, and then stopped and watched me as I sauntered over to pick the wildflowers. And he was still standing there looking at me when I got back, and I didn't do anything. I said, "Hello, little fellow," and he's getting used to my voice. They don't stay very long. They come and they're born and they hop around for a while and then they're gone. Perhaps you'll hear the call of a cuckoo or an owl. Now, I was outside this morning also hearing crows. Now, they came in all of a sudden and started talking to each other and making a terrible racket in the highest part. We've got very tall trees here. I would say these trees are over 20 feet tall. They're just huge. And they were making such a racket, and I had a book about birds, and I decided to read about them to see what in the world they were up to, because crows usually pick up debris, and they kind of are these scavengers. They kind of clean up the environment, and there wasn't anything out there. There were no, there wasn't even any dead leaves or anything, or birds or bugs or anything. So I read about these crows and found out they like to talk to each other, and they communicate where there's a good food source, and they get high in a tree to look at the food source, to watch, and then they chatter away at each other for a while, and they group together, and then they relocate somewhere near a food source. And right now, the farmers are out harvesting, plowing, and taking up the grain, and I suppose it's uncovering something that they want, because they were up in the tree looking across the farm road at that and just clattering away just like they were really talking. So there are so many things to pick up and collect on a walk: pine cones, leaves, acorns, and feathers. Tap into your playful side by balancing on fallen logs. Yes, did you ever do that? I noticed on Fabulous 50, she had a video, I don't know if it was 5 minutes or what, and it was on using your environment for your exercise, on how if you're outside and there's a little part of a sidewalk and you can get up on it and down off of it and up and down a couple of times, and one of them was like balancing, walking on a log. And it says here, it's a great way to recharge yourself. It says trees emit aromatics and chemicals which enhance our well-being and encourage us to relax. Head to the woods and soak up the revitalizing atmosphere. And better yet, plant a little woods in your own backyard, or if you don't have such a thing, get a potted tree and grow it on your patio and sit near it when you can. Now, I want to read also from Brian Kozlowski's book, and it's called The Jane Austen Diet. It's not really a diet. It's a lovely lifestyle, and I'm quite taken with it. And so here's what he says in the last part of it here. Inhale a breeze of mental strength. Now, I had not thought of this, but we are in such an anxious world today, and women especially are suffering from more anxiety than ever before, because those of you who are vital can remember a time when women weren't anxious, when they weren't tense or upset. And it is quite a task to keep the women calm. And in the olden days, or back in the ancient times, it was very important to keep the women calm and not worried about wars and rumors of wars and where the food was coming from, because the men depended on them to keep the family alive, to keep them warm and fed and looked after. Now we have all these institutions that people go to, and they outsource all their care, but they were dependent on to educate their children and to bring them up and to clothe them and to be focused on that. So they were protected from all this stress. And now with the way things are, the media, it's almost very hard to throw it off. But I thought maybe you would like to come away with me for 45 minutes or so and just not think about it. Not think about that old world out there. Not think about what they're peddling to us. They're peddling us strife. And the question that was asked a few weeks ago by someone who made a comment was just so excellent. How do you put the world out of your mind? How do you do that? Well, start observing. Be a scientist of your own life. Science begins with observation. Now, we learned this in homeschool, so I'm telling you that now because I'm homeschooling you. And even if you're vital, it doesn't matter. You can say people ask you, well, what are you doing now? You say, well, I'm being homeschooled. So I'm attending homeschool classes. All right, so science begins with observation. Many people have what the Apostle Paul calls so-called science, and he warns us not to argue about it, about so-called science, because if it's not observable, it isn't real science. And some people will create something and say this is scientific, but they don't have the paperwork to show and the records to show how often it was experimented and what the observation was. So be careful about that. Even you homeschoolers have to be careful about that. So be your own scientist of your own self, of your own home, of your own body, of your own social life, and observe things that I say in this broadcast about homemaking and about inspiring yourself. It all comes from observing. It all comes from thinking about it, or keeping a diary and saying, well, today I felt this, and the day before I felt this, and where does it all come from? And then I start bringing in knowledge, and knowledge, like this is going to say, inhale a breeze of mental strength. This knowledge takes away the anxiety, because anxiety is actually based on uncertainty and fear. So when you have knowledge, you can relax a little bit more when you have knowledge about something. So inhale a breeze of mental strength. This is important because for homemaking, it's actually back-breaking work. Actual housekeeping, homemaking, it is difficult. But you're not just a maid that comes in and without any spiritual connection to anything cleans a sink or sweeps a floor. This is different. Homemaking is different. You're doing it with a spiritual feeling of care and love and gratefulness for the dwelling place. There's just a whole different... if you're teaching your daughter to sweep the floor and you're teaching her to do it in a loving way, talk to her about how the broom is made. We use straw brooms, You can get those. You can get straw brooms for... sometimes they're less than $10. And the history of a straw broom and how luxurious it actually is to have one. And talk to them about how women in the Bible talks about the woman that swept the floor and looking for a lost coin, and all the things that you can find. I have found a button or two, or little nails and screws that have fallen out of things that I just couldn't find. Just by sweeping, things just turn up sometimes. And also, if you will wear something pretty, wear something nice in sweeping, it just puts a little less drudgery into the work. When you're sweeping and you have a broom in your hand, it's not a very pretty sight, is it? But if you wear something nice, or else put a pretty apron over it, it just makes a difference in these grueling jobs. And the tools we have to use are not glamorous. They're not pretty. And I'm not saying they have to be, but I'm just making the point that the way you dress and the mind, doing it with a mind for preserving the home, It's going to make a big difference in how you approach it and how you do it. Now, inhale a breeze of mental strength. Don't forget to follow your nose when it comes to reducing stress. So come away with me for a little while. Let's just put that world aside. And when I said a while ago, be a scientist and observe, when you are not under anxiety, when you do not feel stress, I'm saying this because under the current circumstances, lots of homemakers do suffer from stress or anxiety. Figure out when you were not under stress. And I noticed there were certain things that I did where I didn't feel any stress at all. And where it just never, it just was gone for a while. It was when I was concentrating on something at hand, or when I was going for a walk, there was no stress, or when I was playing the piano, trying to figure out everything and playing it, or when I was doing things that required my full attention, the stress just disappeared. And I noticed this when I was visiting with one of my youngest grandchildren. He wanted to own me and occupy me the whole time I was there. And I realized when I left, I hadn't even thought about that old world the whole time I was with him, because we were together all the time doing things together. And so this is an observation. So just observe. There might be something you do where there was not a thought of it, not a thought of the stress. And most of the whole health doctors recommend not having sustained stress. Interrupt it sometimes, like intermittent fasting from stress. Interrupt it sometimes with a cup of tea or some luxury, some nice thing. In Austen world, it will usually lead to a whiff of lavender. Now, I find lavender extraordinarily strong, and I've only become able to tolerate the scent as I've grown older. And I suppose there are different strains of lavender, and that not all of it smells the same. And that could be that they had a more pleasant smelling lavender. I find it very strong, but in recent times, I have started to like it a little bit better and appreciate it. Inhaling the scent of lavender was thought particularly helpful in Jane's day for calming nerves or soothing aching heads. Smelling lavender is the only thing that quiets Marianne after her stressful encounter with Willoughby at the ball. And Catherine also turns to lavender when approached by the greatly agitated Eleanor. She obliged her to be seated, and rubbed Eleanor's temples with lavender water, and hung over her with affectionate solicitude. Now, I have seen in the very early 1980s Victoria magazines, there'd be a picture of one of these old enamel sinks that you would pour water in, and there'd be floating lavender in there for the scent, and someone just washed their hands in it. And we've lost a lot of that, because we've been taught that your hands are for working, and we've not been given the leisure and the personal care, the sense of the importance of that, or the permission to do that. And so these are some of the things that we want to do as we slow down and put away the world. And just so we're clear, this isn't the wimpy smelling bottle routine beloved by the swoon-happy Victorians. Lavender is truly a powerful stuff. I have some growing outside, but honestly, it is so strong, and when I rubbed it between my fingers, it was just too much. It was overwhelming. It contains brain-soothing chemicals so strong we can literally absorb them through sniffing. Now, this is very interesting. I don't think you would get a allopathic physician to recommend it, and some of the naturopathic physicians know nothing about these things, herbs. Inhalation is one of the best ways to get drugs quickly to the brain and bloodstream. Can anyone say, and the smelling of lavender is one of the nature's quickest chill pills. So it's very important what you smell. Very important to be careful of what people are sniffing. I remember in the olden days there was just awful chemicals were just coming out, and we were smelling things right out our front door, like kerosene and all the stuff they put in the lamp oils, and just different things that weren't real natural. I can remember some of them were quite strong, and they weren't really aware of how dangerous they were to a child's brain. Smelling lavender reduces anxiety, calms racing hearts, and has been shown to reduce the pain and severity of migraine headaches. Migraine, they say sometimes. Like Catherine does in Northanger Abbey, rubbing a few drops of lavender water on your temples is still one of the best ways to experience lavender's soothing power. See recipe at the end of this chapter. Well, I'll just go to the end of this chapter and see what it is. Lavender water. See, these are things you can do. You don't have to go and buy expensive oils. And in fact, when they make the essential oils, they save the waters and sell them separately as waters, and those are just quite delightful. In fact, when you are finished with a bottle of lavender oil or any other kind of essential oil, you can fill that with water and use it quite a bit longer. Lovely for spritzing on pillows or freshly ironed linens. Lavender water could either have been brought from a Regency perfumer. Austen mentions procuring Steele's lavender water for a friend, or made more inexpensively at home, and here are the ingredients. 1 cup of distilled water, 1 tablespoon of rubbing alcohol, 10 drops of pure lavender essential oil. Now, if you just had a lavender plant, you could probably just soak the lavender in water. It would work just fine. And you combine it all and put a lid on it, and it will stay fresh for a couple of months. I want to go also to Eric Sloane's weather book, and there are other weather books you can get for homeschoolers that are just excellent. And the reason that I got into this is the atmosphere of the home. I began to wonder and to observe the atmosphere of the home and how it affected people's moods in my home, and what kind of atmosphere there was. I know there's weather out there, but there's also, it affects the atmosphere in the home, and how knowledge can take away some of the uneasiness that you have when you wonder what happened, what's going on here, and it could be the atmospheric conditions. So I decided to read Eric Sloane's weather book, and it was very, very helpful. Well, so today I am going to read about 2 things. You've heard of the aurora borealis in the north and the aurora australis in the south. In the southern hemisphere in Australia. And so let's talk about this. Many of the weird lights that occur are simply explained. Sometimes at night, or even in the daytime, there'll be some kind of light that seems strange, and I'll wonder what it is. And he talks about how in places where there's a lot of leaves that have piled up, and they're wet, and in the atmosphere, in the damp air, there's a tiny light that comes from it, and that's atmospheric light from it. And so that's nothing to be concerned about. Few of us have missed the thrill of seeing northern lights or the aurora borealis. In reality, this magnificent nighttime display does not originate from the northern seas or from the reflection of sun or polar ice, as often supposed, but directly from the sun. It occurs beyond the stratosphere in the outer stretches of atmosphere called the ionosphere, about 70 miles up. Whenever the sun has a volcanic eruption, as evidenced by a large sunspot, great streams of electrified particles rocket through space towards the Earth at terrific speed, colliding with rarefied gases of the upper atmosphere and making a disturbance which blazes into a brilliant battleground of fire and flashes. Actually, there is always an overload of electrified particles sent to us, but after the 93 million miles and 24 hours between the Sun and the Earth, they have become very much affected by our world's magnetic field. Instead of penetrating any part of our air, then, they flow toward the regions of the north and south magnetic poles, where the heavens glow eternally with solar overcharge. The aurora at the northern magnetic field is called the aurora borealis, one at the southern field, aurora australis. Auroras have been said by sailors to indicate good weather, and there is at certain times some truth in this. When a great mass of polar air comes in, visibility is keen through the dry, cold atmosphere, so that the auroral lights become brighter. And I must say, though, that in centuries before us, people made very, very good use of this energy, and often they're finding out now that often there were receptors for this energy, and it was collected in the in castles and in other types of types of things that were decorative, like from statues and things that they were wreaths and things that were plaster, but there would be coils inside of it to collect this atmospheric energy. And that would be another study completely. I don't really know that much about it, but I was listening to somebody talk about it, and that there's much that is not being harnessed today as there was back centuries ago, and that is a possibility that could be used. And we are supposed to subdue the earth, and it would be nice to harness a whole lot more. Like, we have a lot of rainfall where I live. It'd be nice to collect more of it so that we wouldn't have a drought in the summer. And it's just things like that. And when it's overly hot in the summer, wouldn't it be nice to collect some of that and relieve ourselves from the terrible cold in the winter? Those are just some of my crazy ideas. But I also came here today to talk to you about conversation and how to keep to the point, or how to prevent other people from going off on tangents on conversations. And it can cause a lot of problem, especially if you have children around and you've said something and you've given a little example or just mentioned some little word and they took off on that. Someone just like took off on that and started to create a bit of a problem over it. And that is a conversation that eventually focuses on something that you are uncomfortable with. Conversation that other people take it like Emma told Harriet, you take something and run wild with it. Take an idea and run wild with it. They still do that today. And that is to be almost rehearsed in your mind as what could be taken astray from something you have said. If you said something, or if you're expecting to be talking to someone, kind of rehearse what you're going to say in your mind and try to imagine what they might say back so that you can cut off the idea before it gets out, before they make a big deal out of it. And just start limiting your conversation to things that they can't take and make a big deal out of. And so practice not giving too much information out. We saw that in an old book we had that was for school children, 5th grade or something, that was printed in the 1800s. And there was a story of a man who had to be very careful what he said, because the person he was talking to was taking everything and elaborating on it and taking it off in another direction and another subject. And so keep to the point, and you have to be very plain. You have to be very plain spoken. Keep to the point and don't give them too much to work with. Don't give them too much material. Now, I know there's also the person who can be a problem, who focuses everything on you, and they want to know more about you than you're willing to tell. Not that you have anything to hide, but most people feel kind of uncomfortable talking about what they bought and where they're going and what kind of vacation they had and how much money they spent on something, or what they've been doing, or who they had visited with, or anything like that. Most people don't want to tell everything. Some people don't mind. But one of the reasons that I think that they want to find out is because their lives are not very full, so they kind of feed off of someone else's adventures and someone else's lives. So if you find that the conversations are focusing on you, or your, let's say, your past. Oh, I remember when you used to do such and such, but now you don't do that anymore. How come you don't like that? I remember when you used to eat such and such, but you don't even eat it anymore. What you need to do is focus them on what's going on right now. Say, well, I am what I am right now. This is what I am now, and this is what I'm thinking about right now. And the other thing is, people that, I don't know if any of you get into these outrageous sayings and things that people do. Perhaps I have had more of exposure to it than you have, but I've heard people say very sarcastic things. And if you're a young person and you're listening to this and you're at home with your parents, but you're starting to feel a little superior to them, and you start to mock or use sarcasm about their way of life, then you're headed off the rails. You're probably already off when you start saying things like that. For example, someone might say, well, I see you're wearing such and whatever. I see you wearing flowers. Why do you always wear flowers? And they kind of turn their nose. You get the feeling they just don't approve, or they're turning their nose up. Or maybe you serve them a cup of tea and they make fun of the teacup or something, and they're very rude. Maybe you have invited someone and they're not interested, and they say, oh, I'm not interested in coming over to your way of life. I don't drink tea. I don't want to sit with you and just visit. I'm just not interested. And so what you might do, and of course, not everybody is the same. You have to understand. But there are the people that will say something like, you don't have any feelings. You don't have any friends. And I figured that's pretty much the same as when they're saying as other insulting things, like, well, your house is not casual enough, or the way you live is not what I like. Okay, one thing that I found that was fun to do. Now, I come from a family that's kind of like this, and that is to reverse it and say, I'm really sorry that you don't like such and such, but if you'll come and if you'll come to such and such this, I won't serve you a tea in that teacup. I promise. I'll get you one of those great big mugs out of the cabinet that Mr. S uses for coffee, and I'll let you have whatever you want in it, okay? And I will not serve that to you. In fact, I'll let you sit in a place where you don't even have to look at anyone else drinking out of those cups, because I want you to be happy and I want you to be comfortable. Or you can say, I won't wear anything with flowers on it. I promise. I won't wear anything with flowers because I want you to come. I want you to be comfortable. I will not wear that flowery blouse. I promise. And what you're doing is you're reversing you're reversing something. I'm not sure what it is, but it also takes the burden off of you. And the other thing is the person that says you don't have any feelings, you don't have any friends. Well, usually if you'll do your scientific research, whenever that has been said to you, start looking back and thinking, what was going on at the time? And usually it is kind of a disagreement, or just maybe a nice sort of conversation where you did not want to do something or get into something that they wanted you to get into, and they couldn't manipulate you, and you were just politely declining it all, or you were not in agreement with it, but you were polite, and they finally could not convince you, whatever it was, and they could not control you. So they said, you don't have any feelings and you don't have any friends. Because when someone can't control you and make you cry when they want you to cry, make you laugh when they want you to laugh, make you join their business when they want you to join their business, make you agree with their philosophy, or approve of them when they're using bad language, they will say you don't have any feelings, because they can't manipulate them. They can't manipulate your feelings. They can't manipulate you. And they will say you don't have any friends, because naturally, when you start rejecting that old world out there and you start focusing more on what's lovely and good and pure, naturally, like the prodigal, eventually all these people will just leave because they are uncomfortable in your house and uncomfortable around you. It's kind of a reverse. And so that's what they will say, because they observed you're not real popular, and so they can't control you. And I learned something interesting that you might need to know if you're a homemaker and you're just trying to, mind your own business and be at home and have a lovely life and do your job to guide the home and guard the home, as the Bible says. And it's something called, remember last time I was here, we talked about this accusation against homemakers called escapism. And this is called casuity, C-A-S-U-I-T-Y. Well, I had never heard of that before, but it's a very old word. It existed way back in the 1700s, but it's starting to become vogue again. And it's the use of clever. You ever talk to somebody that is running down your lifestyle or doesn't believe in the way you live, and they want to introduce you to something that they think is better, whether it's a religion or a philosophy or a substance or a just a more casual lifestyle without restraint. This is what they do, and it's called casuity. The use of clever, unsound reasoning, especially involving values, but also in the way things are conducted. A sophistry used to back up dubious or deceptive, self-serving conclusions. That's weird, isn't it? So, when someone devastates you with this kind of talk, unsound reasoning, to back up deceptive conclusions, deceptive self-serving conclusions, then what you have to do, it will devastate you when someone you love does that, or someone you knew or trusted does that. Don't be knocked down by it. Just make sure you get up and try something that you've always wanted to do. Try something new. Try something, redecorate a room, something like that. Always respond in a positive way and use it as a stepping stone for motivation in the positive way. And don't let it pull you down into depression, because you cannot help that person if they pull you down into that sinkhole of that dark world of depression by the way they are acting, okay? So make sure you smile at them, because they are going to frown. They are the ones that are having the problem, not you. Now, I want to teach you today how to be young. This is important to me because I noticed as I've been watching it's summer here, and some of these girls walk around in groups, and they go past, and they walk past my house sometimes, and they absolutely do not look happy. They don't look like the long golden summer people of the olden days. And some of you remember this, what we did when we were young. And so I wanted to tell you about this, especially if you're home and you're young and you're home, how to be young. The reason I want to tell you this is this: everything that I'm going to tell you is going to be something that will carry you through your vital years. And it's not like, oh, this is a stage where we're young and we did that when we were young, but now we're older, we're going to, do something, move on and do something serious. It's always something you can fall back on. And we had, my children had a piano teacher. I have to tell you what her last name was. She was Mrs. Passwaters. What a name, huh? And she was from Kansas. And it's interesting because we're out here in Oregon and she was from Kansas. And Mr. S.'s parents lived in Kansas, in the same town that she and her husband lived in. I don't know why, but a lot of people moved out this way back in the 50s or even 40s and knew each other. But her last name was Passwaters. I thought that was so interesting. But she was a piano teacher. And it was in the early 1990s that my children would go to her. I would go and sit and listen while they learned. And she was concerned because some of her students were canceling their classes because they wanted to go to a track meet, or they wanted to go and throw the javelin, or they wanted to go and to a ball game or participate in these sports. And she said that, yes, sports are nice when you're young, but they don't carry you through to your old age, whereas you could always play the piano when you got, I don't want to say the word, vital. We just don't say that word anymore. I do sometimes like to put my descendants on guilt trips by accusing them of not writing a letter or calling or visiting enough, and I'll call that elder abuse. That just for fun, I tell them to pack their bags because they're going on a guilt trip. So she said, you would have music, and you could always fall back on that, but you can't be throwing the ball around quite so much. Maybe not so much. Maybe so. We're all different. But it's not going to sustain you like some of these things. So that's why I'm going to bring this up to you, the things we used to do when we were young, because we can still do them, and they carry you on through your life. And that, so I had these things listed years ago for my daughter, and I thought, well, I would just run some of them past you on how to be young. And I'm trying to teach the young people how to enjoy being young and how to embrace it. And one of the first things that came up in talking with someone was that she wished that most of you who got married in the 1970s or the 1960s may have missed out on something called the hope chest, because people were ridiculing it at the time and mocking it, and you were supposed to wait and have one of these big showers where people brought gifts to you and they would supply everything that you needed, and you didn't pay any attention to the hope chest. And everyone mocked it. And they're saying, what are you hoping for? Are you going to get a husband? How do you know you're going to get a husband? And they would mock this hope chest business. But I remember the hope chests, and my mother still had hers, and some of the things were still in it. But this lady told me she wished she had taken the hope chest more seriously, because when she got married and her family started, she says her time was totally taken up. And it would have been nice to have had some baby things already made, some blankets already made, and some things that she didn't have to put on a list and go out and buy. And she said that would have made her feel good to have all that stuff already there. And of course we know from reading so much about the pioneer era in all the parts of the world how important that was to them, to have a chest of things to help them get their start on life. And but it was replaced by the big box stores in a way, don't you think? And so she said that would have been the thing that she would have done as a young person that would have continued throughout her life. And as I told you, my mother, by the time I was 12, she still had her her hope chest, and it was still something we opened up and looked at and kind of participated in, and it gave me ideas too. And I started making dish towels out of muslin fabric and saving things like that. And so that's just one thing that you could start. And there are books you can get on how to supply a hope chest and what to put it in. If you don't want to call it a hope chest, you can call it a home chest, and it's your future home chest. But I think it's important to have those things. You don't always know that you will be able to have all these manufactured items. We don't really know. It's best to be prepared and to have that as one of your youthful activities, because it's a happy thing. The other thing was art and literature and music. And while you're very young, participate in that and take an art class, even if it's online, and do that and get yourself a notebook filled up full of your art lessons, because one day you will wish that you could draw something for a child. There's still children that will bring me a piece of paper and say, draw something, or draw me something, draw me a house, draw me a car. And so get some instructions and make yourself a little art book. And literature, know how to read good literature and how to tell a story and how to write a story. And of course music, at least learn how to sing and learn how to appreciate it. So you can, when you're young, you sing while you're doing something. Don't you all vital people remember singing while you had to do piles of dishes by hand or hang the clothes outside? Don't you remember the singing we used to do while we swept? And so these are things that will carry you through your whole life. That when you're young, your mind is real receptive, and so you can learn some things that will carry you on. And then when the hard times hit, whether it's stress or anxiety or anything, you can fall back on some of these. The other was homemaking. Now, we had a lot of people had playhouses, but some people just played or pretended they had a playhouse. But when you're young and you're at home, treat your house as though it's your very own playhouse and enjoy taking care of it. Enjoy poofing the pillows and just enjoy it. Enjoy making little, what do they call them? Scapes, little coffee table scape, putting a little arrangement on it, and enjoy these sort of things. And also we had doll houses. Now, a lot of us didn't have real doll houses, but we could take boxes and we could make levels, lower level, upper level with them, and we could cover them with paper or fabric, whatever we had. And we could make our own furniture out of egg cartons and other things. Someday I'm going to make a facsimile of the egg carton furniture in the dollhouse just to show you. And these are things that, though they may seem very juvenile, they are things that you can fall back on when you're older, and you can show other people how to do it, or just the house and the idea that it's your creative place. And this is very important. The other thing is feminine dress. As I told you before, when you're young, you need to dress young and not dress like an old person. I see groups of girls walking past, and they look you wouldn't know unless you saw their faces that they were young, because they look from the back just like the elderly people look. They look like their clothes are worn out, but there's really no reason for that to be, except that they're not interested. Because, and there's nothing wrong with wearing worn out clothes. This is real worn out. It's very, very thin and threadbare in some places, but they don't know what pretty is. Everything is black or gray, and there's nothing wrong with those colors either. I have some of those in my closet, and everybody's different. But when you're young, I think it's really important to not dress like an elderly person. And what I mean by that is, don't dress as though you've given up Don't dress as though your life is over. Dress as though your life is extremely important and special, and each day is a gift from God. And dress pretty if you can. Now, I have gotten in a lot of trouble over the years whenever I put out an article on the web about feminine dress. The dissenters and the naysayers and the haters just came in hordes and wiped it out and stole phrases from it and called me hateful. Just because you're teaching somebody to be pretty doesn't mean you're telling somebody that they're not pretty. Or there was one girl that said that she had been to a Bible class and there was a teacher there. It was for girls, and there was a teacher there that was trying to teach them how to dress pretty and modest at the same time, and to be, to be dressed as though you're happy. And she went home and told her father that the teacher had criticized her clothes, and she had not done that at all. But this is a very militant thing, it seems like, and you really almost risk your career and your life and your reputation if you talk about it. But feminine dress is something to look up and learn about, and it's the opposite of masculine. See, what would be masculine, and then kind of go the opposite. But when I say feminine dress for how to be young and how to dress young, I don't mean bareness. I mean being able to cover yourself in such a pretty way, but not trying to show off your skin. And that's the purpose of clothing, is to cover. They're coverings. They're to cover your skin, and they're protective. It's very protective. And the other thing is letter writing. Learn at a very young age how to write a letter, and it'll absorb you, and you'll spend many happy moments sitting at a letter writing desk and sending letters to people, and also developing friendships that might last you all your life. That is such a skill, and there are books that you can get on writing letters, but I think in general it's more of a creative thing as per the person's taste and interests, to be able to write letters that are fun and happy. And the other thing is tea time. Now, this is what the things that are good in life, like the Bible talks about whatever's good, lovely, pure, and has virtue in it. Think on these things. Those are the things that the world's going to attack. As you recall, when I put that video on about Laura Ashley and her clothing and how pretty it all was, there was a video that someone else had done that talked about how her designs were undermined by people that didn't like the prettiness of it, and that were wanting to dress women more severely, and how they were undermined. So anything that's good and lovely and pure, it's going to be undermined. So yes, you might wear something really pretty and somebody's going to make some kind of caustic remark to you. And so this happened to me once when I was very young, and I love fabric. I love textiles, and I had some fabric. It was modern fabric, and it was a rose print. And so I had made a really pretty dress out of it and worn it to something I was invited to, and it was couples, and there was a man there that said, "Lydia, why don't you wear roses? Why don't you wear flowers?" And he was being very sarcastic, which surprised me coming out of men. They seemed not to be aware of the difference between feminine and masculine. And so what I did was crushed. I was crushed because I was probably under 25. I was so crushed, and I was so embarrassed that dress just hung in my closet for several years, and I just wouldn't wear anything that had roses on it. And then one day I decided, why should I let that attitude defeat me? Because I began to see that on television, some of the chat shows were inviting designers to come on and try to get women away from this Laura Ashley look and this and the flowers and the florals. And this one that came that was showing off his designs, and his models were walking across the stage, was mocking the florals, and he would say, "Stay away from the roses," and stay away and he was intimidating everyone to leave it. And then I realized where this man had got this from was the prevailing culture. And so I decided after that I was going to wear more roses. So I just made sure that I wore it all the time because I liked it. Now, are we going to let the prevailing culture tell us what to do and what's acceptable and what's not acceptable? And usually the things that they promote are not fun or pretty, and probably not modest either. But if you are a young person, I'm trying to say how to be young. So here's another thing is tea time. Learn at a very young age to have a regular tea time and how to enjoy it, and how to just learn how to hold a cup of fragrant tea up to your face to smell. And it doesn't even have to be tea, but just to appreciate the teacup that someone gave you, or your grandmother's teacup set. And the other thing that we used to do, I even heard one of these herbalist type doctors mention this, and I thought, we used to do that when we were young. We would take a book outside to read. We'd sit in the sun and read a book, or we'd have an umbrella over us and read a book outside. And one of these that I ran across suggested that one of the healthiest things you could do is read a book while you're outside. That was just the height of vacation land. That was a height of the escapism that we're all accused of, was to, as young people, accused, especially girls, accused of being escaping by reading a book out in the sun. That was holiday. That was a vacation. That was the height of luxury, because you weren't in the house doing dishes and you weren't having to do all the things. You were free and carefree, and you were happy to read a book outside. How long has it been since you've taken a book and sat outside to read? And these are things that you start when you're really young, and it carries you through your old age. You might leave them for a while as you get down to the seriousness of life, but as it's always going to be focused on these basic things in the home, there's no reason to leave them. Well, another thing that I noticed my granddaughter doing when she was a little younger was that she would come to see me, and she would go and hunt down the picnic basket and a blanket or a quilt and take it outside and set up a picnic. And I didn't even know she was doing it, but she would open the fridge and say, "Can I have these? Can I have these?" And I'll say, "Sure, help yourself." And I didn't even know and then she'd invite me out for this picnic. And it was on the ground, and we were sitting down on the ground. And I would just like to give you a hint about that, is you can buy these shower curtains at the Dollar Tree for $1.25. Use something like that underneath your blanket or quilt, even if it's an old one, because it just prevents the moisture and the dirt and anything else if you're using it on the ground. And put that in your picnic basket. I don't know of anything else we used to use, but you can waterproof just about everything. And then hospitality, having company. We used to pretend we were having company. And so one of the kids would go out, because I was from a big family, have someone go outside and knock on the door, and then we let them in, and they come in and they're company. And so hospitality, that lasts clear through your vital years, and you don't have to go to a great degree of trouble for it either, especially if you're observing tea time, because that is just a very simple way to show hospitality. I'd like to remind you, if you are young or old, to be careful of yourself in your home. Be careful of your feet, especially. I did say, buy some low-cut boots that you just wear around the house, because they protect your ankles and your toes. There are so many things that you can get to rushing around doing, and then next thing you know, you've hit your toe on something, or on a chair leg or table leg. I just want to remind you to take care of your feet and your skin too. Don't rush past doors and scrape your skin on your arm. Just be careful how you conduct yourself in your house. Was it David that said, "I will walk within my house with a perfect heart"? Now, there's so much more that I have written here that I might have to wait until another video. Gardening. When you're young, one of the most youthful things you can do is get a little garden. There used to be, you could get these gardening journals where you would write down where you planted things, and it would have pages that told what to do next. It was just like a baby book in a way, how your garden grows, and you would record it in this little garden. I don't know if you can still get those or not. Or if not, you could probably find out how to make one. And record your garden and plant your garden and water your garden. And it is a friend that was gardening when she was a girl. Someone made her a gardening apron and sent her some cute little gardening tools. I think they were pink or something. And she just had a little plot about so big. You could probably just do it in a one of those long pots or something and do your own gardening. That is part of something that you can fall back on when you are in your vital years. So, ladies, I hope I've shown you how to be young, and I hope I've shown the young people how to be young, because so many of them are not, because they're walking around with technology or social life that they can't fall back on when they're when I look back on social life. How many people are still with me that I knew when I was younger or growing up? It's usually very few. There might be one or two. So to spend an inordinate amount of time listening to commercial music instead of learning to play it or playing it yourself, or listening to other people sing on the, on other recordings instead of singing by yourself. And whatever you do, try to be what do I want to call do-it-yourself? Be a do-it-yourselfer. And because that's a way to put away the world and start living and doing things yourself. Let me see if I have anything else here. So, how to be young. I'll just put this on the page on which I have embedded this video. Dress in clean, crisp clothes that even if they're worn, they're fresh and they have clear colors, bright colors. Don't be afraid of color. The prevailing culture for decades has put us in the dullest clothing, the dullest colors. You feel like you're on a work farm or something. Just awful. Enjoy a summer's day or an autumn day. Enjoy the seasons. Do seasonal things. And I would say this book here is pretty helpful for that, because it's divided into the seasons. And a young person, if you want to teach them how to be young, this might be a book that you could get for them. Don't dress like you're elderly, following the current culture. Don't waste a lot of time. And also enjoy and be creative. If you can possibly do that, be creative every day, and cultivate friendship through letter writing. Learn to draw. It doesn't have to be perfect, but learn to be creative, and if possible, learn to sew by hand. Now, someone was telling me they were watching a video recently about a woman who was talking about hand sewing, and she was saying that the posture at a sewing machine is just grueling, and it can make you feel like you've been through hard labor in a factory. But when she started stitching by hand, she was much more relaxed. And there were a lot of stitches that she learned that we have lost because of the sewing machine. A lot of stitches that people, when they made their own clothes by hand. So she'd done a few things by hand. And even if you're just mending and doing things by hand, there's something there that is very, very anti-anxiety. The trouble with a sewing machine is it goes very fast, and it can actually create more anxiety as it creates exhaustion. And I only use it when I'm sewing a dress, long seams. And I like to hand stitch the facings. I like to hand stitch the hems on the sleeves and things, just different things on it. Because it's slowing down. So, ladies, I hope I have covered it, and I hope you all stay really young. And you young people, I hope you will learn to be young, because that is going to be, you're going to have a youthful heart, and that's going to be very good for you, and it'll carry you through your vital years. So thank you all for what you do for me and for being here, because if you weren't here, I wouldn't do this. So I want you to stay close to Christ, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.